It's week 15 in the NFL. It's Giants, Commanders, and even better, baby, it's the rematch. What's up, everybody? I want to welcome you to another episode of the Blue Rush Preview. It's your Giants pregame show and podcast for the New York Post and SNY. Every Giants and Commanders fan knows how big this game is and what it means. So we're talking to DC sports expert Kelsey Nicole Nelson again for Know Your Enemy. And we have a very special guest today on Blue Rush, legendary former Giants head coach Tom Coughlin. But before we kick this thing off, I have to intro the gang. I'm joined by New York Post Giants beat writer Paul Schwartz and two-time Super Bowl champ, former Giants clutch kicker Lawrence Tynes is in the building. Guys, this game has been flexed. It's prime time, so Blue Rush, we're prime time. What's going on, fellas?
The game has been flexed.
Absolutely.
When's the last time that happened in Giants land? What a game. What a week. This is what it's all about. And if you can't get up for this one, holy cow, God bless you, because this is going to be a big game for both teams.
Look, you guys know in big games you have to stay within yourself. I think on the Blue Rush podcast, we don't need to see the kicker flexing anymore. I mean, we don't need the kicker flexing.
Well,
we need to see
the Feliciano penalty.
We need to see Thibodeau and Ojolari flexing. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
No kicker flexing. It's great, isn't it? It's great. It's the middle of December. It's a big game. It's fun. You can feel it. It's going to be great atmosphere at FedEx. You know, this is why you get into the game, right? This is why you play. This is why you write. This is why you coach. Let's go. It's great. It's great stuff.
There's that saying where people are always like, oh, pressure is a privilege. Absolutely no. Prime time is a privilege. And I just feel as though this game, you know, from the media aspect of it, Paul, obviously we're hyping it up. We're like, oh, it's the rematch. You know, you guys, how did you feel after the last game? No one knows how to feel after a tie. We know the playoff implications that are involved with this game. But at the same time, we both were in the locker room Wednesday. We both got a chance to feel that energy. I felt a locked-in Giants team that's ready to go in there and to win this game because you could really back up. This game could have two wins to it if you win this game. You agree, Paul?
Oh no, look, Brian Daboll doesn't like the must-win thing. It's like, well, if we lose, is the season over? No. Brian Daboll's been in a ton of playoff games, and he knows when you lose, the season's over, and when you win, you advance. So must win. We can talk semantics. Here's what I feel. If they win the game, they're going to get in the playoffs. If they lose the game, they're not going to get in the playoffs. That's what the analytics show. The locker room, as you said, I think it was very much business as usual. The guys playing ping pong. There were guys off on the side. There were guys talking. Prime time. This has been flexed to prime time. Now, look, there's two things going against each other here. Daniel Jones has played great in 3 games in FedEx Field. He is 0-9 in prime time. But I believe this is the first Sunday night primetime game, the flex situation you talked about, Brandon. I think he's 0-5 on Monday night, 0-4 on Thursday night. Daniel was asked about, going 0-4 on primetime. He said, look, there's a lot of different things going there. He doesn't want to delve into that too much. Look, when you play in primetime, you usually play against good teams. A lot of times it's division teams. The Giants have not played well in those situations. So, but until you win a game under the lights, when everyone's watching, you haven't won a game in that situation. And, Daniel Jones knows that needs to happen here.
Tynes, take us through what's going through a player's mind right now. Primetime game, you got the pressure of, like Paul said, if you win, you're pretty much in the playoffs. If you lose, the New York media, the fans are going to be on you again. What's going through the players' minds right now?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a heightened sense of preparation this week, even though players won't say it. Coaches are definitely not going to say it. But you realize Sunday night, Monday night, it's a privilege, obviously, to play on these nights in the NFL. All your peers are watching. Your family's watching. Everybody's watching. So as a player, thankfully, we played a lot on Sunday night and Monday night football. And you always felt good about it. And you get a little bit more amped up. I don't buy into this whole thing. I hate the question to Daniel Jones, hey, you're 0-9 on primetime. I mean, that's just not fair. I get it. The NFL is not fair, but he has been on some terrible football teams. And naturally, wins and losses are next to his name. But Daniel Jones is not 0-9 in primetime. The Giants are, and they stink. And to your point, Paul, you said they played some, Tom Brady twice. Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, he's played a lot of great football teams in those games. So Sunday night, first time ever for him, right? Playing for Daniel Jones on Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a great game. I'm sure he's amped up about it, but obviously you have to play controlled football, play smart football. But these players, Brandon, make no mistake about it, they're jazzed up, right? They're going to come out ready to play and put on a show for the whole nation.
So the players are jazzed up, and obviously, like you said, Daniel Jones 0 for 9. Paul, this question's for you then. Let's kind of think. Let's think a little ahead right now, going into free agency. Daniel Jones' contract. Is this a bigger game for Daniel Jones, or is it a bigger game for the New York Giants?
It's a bigger game for the Giants. You know what? Look, it's common sense, right? If Daniel Jones goes out and lights it up on Sunday Night Football and the Giants win, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, and they think, well, that was damn good, right? And that was great for our team and great for Daniel. And if he plays lousy, but it's not. They don't have a list right now and saying, okay, after week 1, Daniel Jones, yes, he's going to stay. After week 2, yes, he's going to stay. After week 3, no. I mean, that's not the way this works. You look at the totality of it. Daniel Jones has been asked almost every week about the contract. He has it down pat. I'm not really thinking about right now. I'm thinking about this week in my preparation. And I think most of that is true. Look, in the back of his mind, like, you guys had contracts, right? You know the deal. It's important. Contracts are important, and he knows he doesn't have one, and he knows he wants to stay, and he knows he needs to play well. But that is really, Brian Daboll earlier this week was asked about, is it kind of twofold now? Are you coaching this team and also kind of assessing for next year? And he said, no, I'm coaching this week for this game. I'm not assessing for next year, but in the back of their minds, they are thinking about who can help us now, who can help us in the future. But that's back burner stuff. This is such a big game. You know what? If they're 3-10, you start assessing for 2023. Not at 7-5-1 with a playoff game implications here. They are locked into this game, and so is Daniel Jones.
All right, Daniel Jones is locked in. The players are locked in. But from a pressure standpoint, let's talk on the coaches. Tynes, you think with everything that's going, this New York media, and you've kind of seen Brian Daboll has gone through it all. He's gone through the roller coaster of emotions when it comes to playing or coaching in New York. Do you think that there's an added pressure now on him to win this game?
I think so. I think that's fair. The head coach gets all the criticism and all the praise. He needs to come out, obviously, and play better after a poor Philly game. I mean, they looked not only overmatched, but they were certainly outcoached in that game too. And so Brian Daboll feels a little pressure. He's not going to tell you that, but that's what makes you get up every morning and go prepare and get ready and get your team ready. So that's what you want to feel. I mean, I know some people are push against pressure and things like that, but man, this is what you play for. Division game, Sunday Night Football. Oh man, I'm so excited. I can't wait for it. And I can't imagine what the players are feeling, but certainly the coaching staff feels a little pressure, Brandon. There's no question this week that they are, maybe doing a little bit extra, if you will, a little extra rep in the weight room, or, maybe an extra page of notes, extra meeting with the guys. But this is what it's all about, man. This is why it's fun. It's finally fun to talk about. It's been a while for the Giants.
And this is New York. This is coaching in New York. Brian Daboll is getting a taste of what it's like to coach in New York. You get the praise, then the finger pointing, and you get the added pressure. And speaking of pressure, the finger pointing, and the praise, we got a chance to speak to a former Giants coach who endured it all and still made an impact both on the field and off the field in his players' lives. Two-time Super Bowl champ, Coach Tom Coughlin joins us now to talk about his new book, A Giants Win, inside the New York Giants' historic upset over the New England Patriots in Super Bowl XLII.
Hey, Coach.
Hi, Lawrence.
Thank you for coming on. It's great to see you. Something I wanted to ask, and I obviously never asked you this, but when that season was chugging along, right, Super Bowl XLII season, was there ever a time either you guys as a staff or the organization said, you know what, we might have something here. We might have a team that can go on a run and win a Super Bowl. Did that conversation ever take place?
I don't ever recall anything being said to that nature. However, knowing that we were the road warriors, we won 11 games on the road that year, and the way that we were able to play away from our home stadium, quite frankly. As we went through the second half of the season, we had some big time disappointments. I mean, we lost to Minnesota in a bad football game. We lost to Washington at home. So after beating Washington on the road when we were 0-2, we won 6 in a row. And then we went into the second half of the season feeling like, and quite frankly, we should have won 12 games that year. We won 10, but we should have won 12. But it took us I know you remember Buffalo, to go to Buffalo to win. We had to win there, otherwise we're going to have to, beat the Patriots at home when they were going for the undefeated season. But I think when we came off the field of that Saturday night game with the New England Patriots, they beat us. They beat us 38-35, but we led in the fourth quarter. It was a completely different game from our Super Bowl experience, obviously. But I think every one of our players knew that we could play. And I do believe that, Lawrence, you remember when I played you the John Madden message, that had a real impact on us, because basically what John Madden said to me and to our team was, that's the greatest thing that's happened to the NFL in the last 10 years. And if you remember, he said, and I hope they realize it, which, who knows whether the powers to be did or not. But John was saying, our game is a competitive game. We don't hold our players out. We don't prevent them from, we have a 16-game schedule at that time. And we're expected to compete and play as hard as we can in those games. And you remember how I said to you on that Monday, I think it was, that there was no doubt, we being the New York Giants, the flagship team of the NFL, the red, white, and blue, and me being a historian, we're never going to let history look back on that Saturday night game and say that the Giants didn't do their best to beat a team that was going for an undefeated season.
Yeah. Tom, from covering you all those years, I know when we would ask you a question, kind of like, what about this? You would say, that's a hypothetical. You were not big on hypotheticals. Now, I'm sorry, I am going to give you a hypothetical. Since we have Lawrence on the air here, let's go back to frozen Lambeau Field. There were 2 field goals that were not made for a variety of reasons.
Right.
If Lawrence in overtime there does not run on the field before you call for the field goal team, is history changed, and does he never get that kick? I mean, take me back to that, because, we've talked about that in this podcast, and
sure.
Lawrence still gets chills talking about it. And I don't mean the cold chills. I mean the other kind of chills.
I know what you mean.
Yeah.
Goosebumps. I get them too.
Yeah.
But here's the way that went. If you remember exactly, Paul, in the fourth quarter, we did miss, was it a 46-yarder? We missed
43.
But later, that was the snap. Lawrence had nothing to do with that one. That was the snap. And of course, the ball was as hard as a rock. Okay. It was minus 24. The ball's as hard as a rock. So, and then we did, quite frankly, it was a bad snap. It wasn't handled well. Lawrence took a shot at it, but, just dribbled off to the left. So that really wasn't going to deter me. What I wanted to know is something that I asked him specifically in the first half of the game. I slid up next to him. I was looking at the field, and I said, Lawrence, can you kick a 46-yard field goal? He turned his back and walked away from me.
Can I explain myself?
Please
no,
do.
You cannot explain yourself. So what happened at the end of the game, we're in the overtime. Obviously, Corey Webster makes a great catch. He had great hands. Puts the ball back down. We don't gain a yard. I mean, it's like we're running into a wall or something, and we don't gain anything. So now it's that distance again, okay? I want to know if Lawrence thinks he can make that kick. I'm just looking at him. Block, move. He throws his cape off. He runs out on the field. I yell, field goal. Now I got a bunch of people in my ear, coaches that are saying, oh, no, be careful here now, coach. If you do that and we don't make it, they're going to have great field position. Field goal. They all run out there. He could have made it from 55. How well he hit that ball. I mean, it was through. It was through the minute he hit it. So I look at pictures today. Remember Antonio Pierce on the sideline? His eyes looked like they had 50-cent pieces in his.
Yeah.
when he saw that ball go through, because the realization now for a team that nobody, you guys have to understand this, nobody gave us a chance in any game.
Yeah.
You remember the Fox crew. Fox had the Super Bowl, right? All the Fox experts, they didn't even pick us to win against Tampa.
Yeah.
We got nobody picking us to win against Tampa. Nobody against Dallas. Dallas beat us twice in the regular season. Nobody against Green Bay, and it's minus 24. And Eli and Plaxico are playing like it's 75 in the backyard.
Yeah.
That kind of day, nobody gives us a chance. So, there we are in the locker room. We couldn't wait to get in there to get some more chicken soup broth. and
Yeah.
Let me tell you something. In the second half, I wasn't even cold. And I said that to Strahan the other day, and he said, yeah, because you were frozen. How are you going to be cold when you're frozen?
Going up into that year, going up into that season, what made you kind of adapt, or what was your mindset going into that season to kind of not so much change, but kind of fine tune and you're not only your coaching, but your culture as well?
Well, there's a lot said about change, and I did change. I needed to change, okay? But I've always believed that if you don't learn, if you stop learning and adjusting and so on, you're not going to be in the business 22 years. But that situation that occurred right after the 06 season, we're 8-8. A lot of years, that's just a go-ahead through deal. But, we had a ton of injuries, and we fought like heck to get in the playoffs. Then we got beat right away. First round, boom, and out. Get rid of Coughlin. So if you remember what happened with me in the media, Paul remembers because Paul was in my office. The whole thing was Pat Hanlon set it up. Let's take the gloves off. Let's bring the individual writers and so on and so forth in. We'll sit and we'll look at each other and what do you not like about me? And I'll tell you what I don't like about you. And what I came to realize was I'm a blue collar guy. Okay. And these people working in the media industry, they're blue collar guys too. They're looking to fight for their jobs. They're battling for their jobs. I can be a little better. I'm never going to tell anybody anything that's going to come back to hurt me, but I certainly can show more respect, and I can give them more information, and I can do it in a way that is not adversarial. And so I decided I would do that. And the same thing with my team. I was worried that my communication with my team wasn't finding the right spot. And so we formed the leadership council. Lawrence can tell you about that. And what these guys did for me was they took my message and my information and they distributed it to their group. And I never heard that people walking by me going, I wonder what Coughlin's going to do at Thanksgiving. I wonder how he's going to take care of Christmas. I wonder what we're going to do when we have a Monday night game. I wonder how we're going to. No, they took care of all of that. And I shared a lot of things with them.
It's such an honor that we got a chance to speak with Coach. To the fans that are listening and watching, we could have talked to him the entire day. Like we could have spoke with Coach for the entire day. So make sure you guys go and pick up his new book, A Giant Win. It's available for purchase now. Thank you, Coach Coughlin, for joining us. But let's turn back. Let's focus ahead on this week's game. The Commanders. Lawrence, what are your keys to the game? Start us off.
We got to stop the run. It has to. It has to happen. It has to start right now. They have given up way too many yards in the last 6, 7, 8 games. 165 2 weeks ago. Robinson's running great. Gibson's a great complimentary back. They do kind of mix in the receiver, Samuel, and some jet sweeps and things like that. So I think if they do that and make them a little bit more one-dimensional, Taylor Heineke will throw the ball up for grabs. He didn't do that much. Obviously, we got a strip sack fumble in the game 2 weeks ago. But if you can shut the run down, it has to be paramount. It has to be something that is all they're talking about this week. Stop the run, stop the run, stop the run. McLaurin is going to do what he does. But if you can shut this run game down and make them one-dimensional, I think that favors the Giants. So especially with the pass rush getting healthy, if you know they're passing, Kayvon, Thibodeau, Azeez, the guys inside, Dexter and Leonard, I think it favors the Giants.
Paul, we've been going into each game saying Giants have to stop the run, stop the run. 165 yards later, 200-something yards later, we're sitting there on the post-game show saying to ourselves, they didn't stop the run. How? Or how can they stop the run? Or is it just not in their DNA on this defense right now for this year?
Well, I think they'll be getting Leonard
Williams
Williams
back. He was limited in practice on Wednesday. That helps. He's one of their best players. It's got to be all hands on deck because they don't have the inside linebackers. Jalen Smith pursues the ball okay, but do I think he's going to be one of their starting inside linebackers in 2023? I do not. So look, they have to do a credible enough job. There's no question about it. And you know what? One of the best ways to do it is to stay on the field. The time of possession in the first game was 41-29 in favor of the Commanders. Yeah. That cannot happen. What does that mean? In the second half, Saquon Barkley had virtually no rushing yards. The Giants have to run the ball. Now, that's a broken record. We said that virtually every podcast, but they have to run the ball. They cannot survive by throwing the ball, period. The Commanders, like we said, they have McLaurin, they have Samuel, they have more weapons than the Giants do. So the Giants have to make plays in the passing game, but Saquon and Daniel Jones, time of possession has to be more balanced or towards the Giants. If the Giants have the ball, the Commanders can't be running it. It's simple. It's a fact. So Saquon, Daniel, Brightwell, Breida, Joe Morris, Rodney Hampton, the guys you played with, Lawrence, Jacobs, Ward, Bradshaw, whoever. Someone's got to run the ball for this team on Sunday night because you can't win with Daniel throwing it. They're just not built that way.
So it's almost like our run game could protect our run defense. Keep
Absolutely.
These guys off the field and keep the ball in Taylor Heineke's hands, because last time Giants had 5 sacks. Paul, Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari are playing lights out. You got a chance to kind of talk to Kayvon in the locker room. Do you think this is Kayvon and Azeez's breakout game together as a pass rush duo?
It could be. It needs to be in a lot of ways. Those guys are funny. Their lockers are right near each other. Azeez is polite and says nothing. Very polite, very agreeable, says nothing. Kayvon can be a little edgy and just is he's got that young Strahan a little bit in him, a little bit, maybe even more so because this is several generations and he's a product of social media and things. It was very funny. My colleague Steve Serby was going at those guys and he's saying, "You're Batman and Robin. You're Batman and Robin." Kayvon wanted no part of that. He says, "No, I don't like that." So he says, "Okay, give me something. What are you guys?" He says, "We're peanut butter and jelly." Oh. So why peanut butter and jelly? He said, "We're funny. We're better together." And then he says, "Well, I'm jelly and Azeez is peanut butter." Look, at this point, I have no idea what he's talking about. So Azeez says, no, I think I'm more like jelly. So he says, okay. So Kayvon says, "No, I'll be peanut butter because I'm healthy for you. I'm healthy." And then they go on this thing. Kayvon is saying that
that's amazing.
It's unbelievable. He just so Kayvon says, "I'm hip hop," and Azeez is classical music because Azeez is smooth. He's smooth like classical music. And he said, "I look like I'm working hard to get out there, so I'm like hip hop." Look, it's great stuff. It'll be better stuff if they win on Sunday night. And then you go to his locker and he'll go off.
He will.
He's a superstar waiting to happen, but he's got 2 sacks. So, as your former coach, right, Tom would do, right? Remember, Tom would do this a lot. Yeah. He wouldn't say anything. He'd be like, let's go. That's what he would say to Kayvon right now.
Yeah.
So on top of that, then, Tynes, we're playing in a primetime game. You have a primetime type personality when it comes to Kayvon. Is it almost like he needs to show up in this game because the stats aren't there in that sense?
I think he's going to push, obviously, a little harder this week. The stats aren't there, like you mentioned, but he's certainly playing great. Let's not take anything away from the young man. He is playing really good football, but again, you want to get those sacks. He wants to get them. I think he even alluded to that, maybe even post-game or this week. He wants those sacks because he wants to be recognized as a Micah Parsons type player, which will come in due time. But he needs to play well. Listen, in order for the Giants to have a chance, they have to play well. Him and Azeez, Dexter, and Leonard have to play really good football. The game's on them, and that's okay. Like Dave Tollefson said a couple weeks ago, put it on them. Put it on them. That's where all the money's spent. That's where all the draft capital has been spent on this team. Those are the guys that have to show up on these big games, and that's why you pay them all that money and why they were drafted where they were drafted. That's who needs to show up on Sunday, that D-line.
All right, so go ahead, Paul.
One thing Kayvon
said, he was asked, "Do you like prime time?" And he didn't miss a beat, and he said, Prime time likes me. You know,
These
are great lines.
I need to get a shirt.
Oh,
You know what? If they win and he has a few sacks, prime time likes me. He was also great riffing on holding penalties because remember he got one last week. I mean, he put his hands up as he was rushing and, oh my God, I'm getting held. And I said, you like getting holding penalties? And he said, well, yeah, I like it, but I said, is it kind of like a sack for you? Because he says, no. It's not like a sack. It's because it doesn't give you a stat. And he said, it makes us stay on the field an extra snap because they take the 10 yards and then it's replay the down. And he said, us defensive players, we don't like playing extra downs. He's funny. He's a funny guy.
Paul, it's funny you say that. Antrell Roll and Corey Webster used to call me Prime Tynes. Get it?
Prime Tynes.
Oh, I like it.
That's what they used to call me.
What about
who named
Prime
me that?
Tynes?
You know who named me that? Was Deion Sanders. I did an interview with Deion. It's at the Super Bowl 42. It was after the Green Bay kick. I'm sitting in the stands. I kind of had my own little section. Deion comes up and he goes, I call you Prime Tynes. And it stuck from there. Like I think Webby was there or somebody heard it, and then Webby told Antrell. So Prime Tynes. Just throwing that out there.
You make any money on that? Any t-shirt?
No, I didn't. Not a
that?
dime. Not a nickel. Not a nickel.
There was no Instagram back in our day, Tynes, back when we played.
I didn't have social media until I got done playing. So I missed the boat.
So you guys are talking about, let's go back to quickly on Kayvon having to have a big game of prime times or prime time because of where he was drafted. Another one of our first-round draft pick. This could be a huge game for him on the prime time. I keep saying prime times on the prime times level. Evan Neal has a chance to kind of right some of his wrongs throughout the course of this year. Paul, how big of a game does Evan Neal need to have this second time around?
He needs to play a lot better than he did against the Eagles, but he was actually good against the Commanders. Okay. So that's a positive thing. Evan Neal is also, he's one of these first round picks. He is the anti-Kayvon Thibodeau. He is quiet. He sits there. He won't say a word, but if you go up to him, and I saw Wednesday, one rider went over to him, I gave him his space. Then another rider went over to him, I gave him his space. And I was like the third man in. And a lot of these rookies, especially after a bad game, right? He could, okay, that's enough. He sat there. It's good that he was sitting because when he stands, I can't, I have to crane my neck so high to see him. So he was sitting, I was standing. We were about at the same level. And he said, I have to do a better. He thought his run blocking last week was okay. He said, I have to do a better job of moving my feet and trusting my set angles. He knows what he needs to work on. He said games like that, you really learn a lot. He's mentally pretty good. He also has a guy sitting right next to him, Andrew Thomas, who went through all of this 2 years ago. And he said he's a big help. Anytime I need him, he's like a big brother. He really helps. So I'm not really worried about Evan Neal. I'm really not. And he played okay against the Commanders. So he has that in the back of his head. This is not the Eagles in back-to-back weeks where he got smoked. He's got the Commanders, and he did better against them. He's okay. I think he's going to be okay.
I think one thing that's just kind of weird when it comes to his roller coaster type seasons, when you think of a first round pick, a top 10 pick out of Alabama, you're thinking league ready right away. You're not expecting to hear things where it's like, I got to work on my kick slide or my drop in that type of sense. Usually when it comes to Bama boys, they're league ready. Ohio State wide receivers, when they come out, they're league ready in that sense. But I think it's great for him to open up and to talk about that because it just goes to show he knows his ceiling is a lot higher than what it is right now, and he's going to continuously get better in that sense. And I think that you got to anchor on both the left and right side of that offensive line when it comes to the Giants' offense for years to come. And the last matchup that I think we really need to talk about, especially coming out of last game, is those Commanders receivers versus our Giants defensive backs. And I had a chance to talk to Darnay Holmes in the locker room, and he was kind of talking because, let me backtrack a little bit. At practice, Paul, during individuals, you saw the corners working on the releases of Commanders receivers running shallow crosses, pick routes, shallow crosses. I keep saying it started with the Detroit Lions, and now it's a copycat league, and people are going to run it until you stop them. So you got a chance to see that. And I was talking to Darnay Holmes in the locker room, and I'm kind of telling you, like, hey, like with Xavier out, with Adoree Jackson out, like what does this mean? What do you guys got to do better? And he was talking about how with Julian Love being forced to be back there and being the communicator, Julian Love has been thrown into a position where he's trying to communicate with the DBs. He's like, he is not used to having that little bit of time to communicate. So Darnay was saying how he's putting it on himself to communicate with the corners. So now whether they got a banjo something, in and out something, receiver comes in, he takes him, he goes in, the corner goes out. The communication for these shallow crosses. So this is what I want to see. But you're going against a Jahan Dotson, first-round draft pick who's coming around, scary Terry McLaurin, and Curtis Samuel, who is kind of that Swiss Army knife for those Commanders receivers. This week, I want to see the Giants secondary play these Washington Commander receivers a lot better than what they did the first time. Would you agree with that, Tynes?
Yeah, and Darnay Holmes did not play in that game, guys.
Yep.
Let's not forget that.
Yep.
Yeah, Zion Gilbert played. He was a little bit overmatched. He competed, but I don't think you can underestimate the value of Darnay Holmes and what he brings to this team. He is a dog in the middle, and playing that slot corner is one of the most difficult jobs in football.
Yep.
Two-way goes, crossers, traffic. There's so many problems in there, and he is built for that position. I think the Giants coaching staff loves this kid. He brings an energy and a juice to this defense. So I think him coming back is a big, big deal. Obviously, he played last week. He missed this first game. So I don't think we can underestimate Darnay Holmes coming back. And listen, we got to stop giving all the excuses to these DBs right now. They have played a lot of snaps, okay? And I get Adoree Jackson would help. Xavier McKinney would help. But Fabian Moreau and McLeod and all these other guys, they're pro football players. They played a lot of meaningful football. They just saw this team. I expect them to play well. They should. They've played a lot of football. They're not the starters. They're not the day one starters. They weren't drafted here, a lot of them. But after a little while, guys, there's expectations. And the coaching staff should expect them to all go play well.
Paul.
You know what? It's true. And Lawrence, when you're talking that, and I'm thinking about, nobody cares, no excuses. These guys are getting all the reps in practice also, right? It's not like that, they know they've been the starters. They're getting the reps. You mentioned, Deion Sanders giving you a nickname. They're not Deion Sanders. I get it, but you're right. And now it's got to work together. They can't cover for 6 seconds back there. It's all got to work together. They're not a perfect defense. They're a flawed defense, but they have some first-round draft picks up front. The guys on the back end are not. But you're right. At this point, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep the ball in front of you. You can't let what happened against the Commanders the first time where you're missing tackles and guys are zigzagging and crossing their way into the end zone. That can't happen. Make them snap at another down, make them get down the field, keep McLaurin in front of you as best as you can. It's easier said than done, but Lawrence, you hit a nerve there when you said that. You're right. These guys have been getting practice reps every week now. It's not like oh my God, somebody got hurt, we're thrown in. That's not the case. They know they're the starters. Adoree's not coming back right now. Xavier McKinney's not coming back right now. Aaron Robinson's not coming back right now. You're right. So they don't have to look over their shoulder. They just have to not play great, but play solid. Play solid, play smart. Don't do anything stupid. Look, this game was 2020 the first time. It's not like they blew them out. It's not the Eagles here. There's not that much difference between these teams. You make a couple more little plays here, you win the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a couple missed tackles, you win the game. You also held them 3 for 14, 3 for 17 on third down. So you did some good things as well, but obviously the bad things are going to get highlighted. Great block, fellas. You guys, the audience, you see how the match is going to go, or how we think the match is going to go from our eyes. But for the second time in 2 weeks, we have DC sports expert Kelsey Nicole Nelson. She's joining us to help us break down the tie on this week's Know Your Enemy. Giants go into FedEx Field Sunday to take on the Commanders. They tied 20-20 the first time they played back in Week 13. So we're bringing back Kelsey Nicole Nelson, who's a DC sports expert, so we can break down the rematch in this week's Know Your Enemy. Kelsey, we're not enemies, like you corrected me with last time, but it's Giants, Commanders. This game has playoff implications. It's a lot on the line. First and foremost, thanks for joining us. Let's get into this matchup because the Commanders jumped up 10-0, 411 yards total last matchup. Let's say you're Commanders offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. How are you going to attack the Giants defense the second time around?
Well, first, I'm telling my offense, Brandon, we cannot have a tie again, all right? These ties, they're weird. We still don't know how to fill. So that's first and foremost. But as you said, the 411 yards, that was actually the most net yards this season for the offense. I think that's something that they can bounce off of. And then also, I think they have to continue to control the clock. This was an amazing stat, folks. 41 minutes and 11 seconds they controlled the clock this game. They outgained the Giants by 95 yards and ran 17 more plays than New York. So you want to continue to do that. Why? Because you keep the offense off the field. Now, I think Washington is going to have to adjust their offensive line. Taylor Heineke was on his back 5 times. You cannot have that. Also stripped twice, one of those which he lost. You cannot be giving the defense turnovers because, of course, that just helps the offense. But the problem with Washington right now is their offensive line. You have center Tyler Larson. He is on the injured reserve list. You're going to have to move somebody over. Most likely that's for Nick Martin or Wes Schweitzer. Offensive guard Trey Turner. He's also having some work done and some treatment. And offensive lineman Sam Cosmi also dealing with a sprained ankle. So all that to say, how do you protect him with that? Well, that means he's going to have to get the ball out of his hand quickly. You want to continue to see this emergence of Jahan Doxson. One thing we love in Washington is when a first rounder produces, Brendan, and that he did this last game, hauling in 5 passes, that big touchdown, right? That really helped to change that game, forcing overtime in this one, and continued to feed Terry McLaurin. He had over 100 yards this game. Curtis Samuel, and last but not least, feed Brian Robinson almost 100 yards this game. But the run game has worked well for Washington Commanders. And no penalties, 56 yards in penalties. Logan Thomas, Cole Turner, we just cannot have that. So if I'm Scott Turner, that's going to be my game plan.
Yeah, Jahan Dodson, Scary Terry, and Brian Robinson had themselves a day. But that's Riverside. Defensively, the Commanders, they sacked Daniel Jones 4 times, recovered a fumble, and held the Giants' offense to 4 of 13 on third downs. Now you're Jack Del Rio, Commanders defensive coordinator. So do you stick to that game plan, or what wrinkles do you add to it this time around?
Well, let me tell you, everyone's talking about Washington's defense right now. Why? Because they've allowed 24 or fewer points for the 9th straight game. Talk about playing defense your way. That's right now the longest active streak in the National Football League. So that's something that your defense can feed off of. But something they're not happy about on defense is how much Daniel Jones was able to scramble. 71 yards scrambling on 12 carries. You can't let Daniel Jones get out the pocket. And also the run game. They weren't able to stop Saquon Barkley. And this is a team that prides itself on being able to stop the run. They were able to get Daniel Jones, as you mentioned. They had 2 sacks, Deron Payne. But other than that, other than the sacks, they really weren't able to get pressure on him. The Giants' offensive line held up really well. So you want to put that pressure on him. Montez Sweat, I think, was somebody that was contained. You want to get him back going. But then also, I think in the secondary, Brandon, we had questions with Benjamin St. Juste out right now. And we're going to see if he gets healthy enough to play in this Sunday night matchup that many of us are excited for. Christian Holmes was tested. I think Slayton got the better of him. He ended up getting out the game. Then Danny Johnson came in and played better. But you cannot have the Giants getting any big plays. Daniel Jones had a very good first half. I think the second half of the game was when Washington's defense stepped up more. But other than that, too, you know, we're looking forward to the defense also getting healthy. Montez Sweat, Jonathan, and James Smith-Williams right now in a concussion protocol. So have to see if they'll be able to get back, because otherwise it's going to be other guys stepping up on this defense. And it is a next man up type of game. And also Jamin Davis also having a procedure on his thumb. I bring that up, Brandon, because they just came off of a bye week. This is when you're supposed to get healthy. But right now, the Washington Commanders do have some question marks about who will be playing in this game.
Yeah, I mean, question marks all around the board. You guys need to get healthy. The Giants, for sure, are looking to get some key pieces back. All right, we've agreed. We're not in on a tie on this one. So who's got more pressure to gamble and to be more aggressive, Brian Daboll or Riverboat Ron?
Well, let's remember how Riverboat Ron got that nickname, right? And this is a must-win for Washington. Now, luckily, Brandon, this was a very favorable bye week for the Washington Commanders. Why? Because I'm sorry, New York, don't hate me for this, but the Giants lost. We all saw that one, and then also Seattle lost. So really, Washington doing nothing was able to move up 2 spots in the playoff race. But Washington knows they control their own destiny. They must win now. And especially when you look at 3 of their next 4 games are against NFC opponents. Okay, so you have the San Francisco 49ers after, and you end with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Dallas Cowboys game might be better for Washington because many are assuming that Dallas will be resting some of their starters by that chance. But again, Washington, they can't have any ties. This is a win and you're in type of scenario. They know they have to win here on out. And especially after the turnaround of the season that they've had, Washington knows that this game has to end in a W at home. And this is also why they're encouraging all of their fans to continue to show up at FedEx Field for this Sunday night matchup. And if I can add, Washington has won their primetime matchups in this game, so they're also feeling excited about that.
All right, thanks, Kelsey, for that. We all agree we don't want to tie this time around. No ties, second time around. All right, it's prime time, so it's time to get into some of our predictions. Again, it's prime time, Paul, so I'm going to start with you, my man. These stats are from the first game. No ties. We need overs and unders. We need a win or a loss for this week. So let's start with Washington rushing yards for 165 yards, over or under. Paul, go.
I say under. They have to do a better job. Like I said, Washington had the ball for 41 minutes, and that's how you accumulate those yards. It wasn't like they got tons of chunk yards. They just kept on grinding. The Giants are 29th in the league, allowing almost 150 yards. I think they can be around that. That's under 165, according to my math. I'll go under.
Tynes.
Yeah, 36 carries for 165 2 weeks ago. If the Giants want to win this game, I think you definitely have to be under that number. They do give up a lot of yards rushing, but I think that is the sole focus this week. I think Wink Martindale and all these defensive coaches came in and on Monday, Tuesday, whenever the hell they got started, and said, we have to stop the run. Taylor Heineke does not really scare you in the passing game, I don't think. Stop the run, you have a chance. So I say under.
I'm going to say over. If I'm Commanders offensive coordinator Scott Turner, I want to get that attempts from 30 to 35, possibly in the 40s. I am going to make Wink Martindale and that Giants defensive line front seven stop that rush game, because that's what they do so well. All right, Washington sacks on the New York Giants. So sacks 4 is what they got last time. I'll put it there. Over under 4 times. We'll start with you.
Well, I think Bredesen may play. I'm not 100% sure about that. The offensive line did struggle last week in spots. It was mainly Evan Neal. But Evan Neal, like Paul said, played really well against this front. And it was the two interior guys, Allen and what's the other guy's name?
Payne.
Somebody help me out. Payne and Allen, both fantastic Pro Bowl football players, are the ones who wreaked havoc on us last game. I don't think they're going to have 4 sacks. Having said all that nonsense, what I just rambled, no 4 sacks. I think the Giants somehow figure it out, get the ball running, get the ball throwing. So under 4 for me.
Paul?
All right. Quick quiz. Who has been sacked most in the league this year, quarterback-wise? Quick.
Daniel Jones.
He's second with 41. Russell Wilson, 43. Okay?
That's right.
You don't want to be second. You don't want to be second in the league in this, right? Having said that, I think it's under. I really do. I think maybe 3. I don't think it's going to be 4. I think John Feliciano is going to be primed to have his best game. He knows, Lawrence, you want to do the flex again? Do the flex again. That's what he did and cost him 10 yards. That was he knows that cost him something. So I think he's going to play a lot better. He just played these guys. They're really good. He just plays these guys. So I think their pride will kick in. It'll be under 4 sacks.
Yeah, I'm going to have to go with under. You're going to have to be able to throw the football, create some sort of clean pocket for Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones, one thing we saw against Philly last game, is if you're looking and you're waiting for maybe that 3rd, 4th read to open up, forget it. Take off. Get 3-4 yards. Set them up in some sort of 2nd and short or even 3rd and short. You need to stay ahead of the chains this time around this game. All right, the Giants rushed for 134 yards last game. We'll put that at 134. Paul, start us off.
Over. It's got to be over. I remember 2 weeks ago I was bullish on the Giants. I thought they'd win. I'm sort of bullish on them again, and I think over. I think that's a fair number. It has to be over that. We've talked about this. I know Lawrence has been harping on this about getting Breida and Brightwell some carries. I just don't see that. Last week they did because Saquon was on a pitch count. Saquon practiced. Saquon is not on the injury report this week, okay? Not. No shoulder, no neck. He's not on the injury report. He practiced full on Wednesday. I think that's a good sign. I'm going to go over. One of these weeks he's going to have a bigger game, and Daniel's going to run for a bunch of yards, so I say over.
Tynes.
Yeah, I think Saquon rushes for more than that by himself this week.
Ooh.
There was something I saw in the Philly game, and he came in with the injury, and I think maybe it was more a little bit precaution. There was a moment in that Eagles game where I saw him it looked like his old self. He was accelerating through the hole. I think he realized, okay, my neck is not bad. Of course, we had to abandon the running game and move on because we were getting our butts kicked. But having said that, Saquon can go, and he loves this place. He's had some big games here, and you can't discount that. Mentally feeling good about where you're playing, I think for sure over. I think Saquon does that by himself.
I say under, guys. I apologize for that, but the last two games, the Giants Washington had them up 10-0, and then the Eagles went up 21-0. I understand you want to go into this game trying to run the ball, but they just haven't had a fast enough start for me to think that they'll be able to stick to the run game. So I'm going to go ahead and say over, but I think Daniel Jones throws possibly for 300. If that's a consolation prize. All right, New York Giants, committed turnovers. We're going to put it at 1. We had 1 last game. Over, under. Tynes.
I'll say under because it's 1. I think they'll have at least 1 somewhere along the line. Of course, we got off to the bad start against Washington 2 weeks ago with Daniel fumbling after a couple, maybe 1 or 2 first downs. That hurt. That really did hurt. So I'll say they'll have 1 somewhere. I don't know where it's going to come from, but we'll have 1. So I'll say under.
Paul?
Yeah, I'll say under also. Look, 1 is not
a lot, right? So, but look, you have 2 turnovers you're probably going to lose. Daniel's been very careful, right? Lawrence, you mentioned that fumble. That was only his 4th lost fumble of the season. Way better than he was. He's thrown, 3 or 4 interceptions this year? 4, right? Yep. Not a lot. He's cautious, maybe sometimes too cautious. And so I'll say under. And Brandon, you said Daniel may throw for 300 yards. I want to know which receivers are adding up to those 300 yards. That's what I want to know.
Isaiah Hodgins, get this man the ball. Please get this man the ball. Back-to-back touchdowns. Come on, that's who I think will get the bulk of the yards this week. I'm going to go under on the turnovers as well. I think Daniel Jones is going to be lights out this game. I think it's just one of those games where it's like, you know what? Everyone has something to say about me. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is DJ. Vanilla Vic is back, and I think this is the game where he kind of takes over, to kind of control his narrative going into this offseason. All right, New York Giants points scored. This is our last one, 20. We ain't having no tie this week. Tynes, over, under.
I'm going to say over. I think both teams will play better offensively. I think this kind of becomes not necessarily a shootout, but this is going to be one of those games. It's man versus man. We know what you're going to do, and you guys know what we're going to do. So it's going to be one of those games. You just got to win your individual battles. I say over 20 points for the Giants.
All right. Thank you, guys, for playing this. I want you guys to play at home. Please write into the comments. Oh, shoot. My bad, Paul. My bad. I jumped the gun, Paul. 20 points.
I don't get
a prediction here.
Oh, go ahead.
We're just moving.
Paul's prime time prediction.
Well, there was no prediction. It was just over on the points, right?
Yeah, over, under. Yeah.
Yeah, look, they had 20 last week and 2 weeks ago, and had so many chances in the fourth quarter and overtime to go get 23. So many chances. I think they cash in on some of those chances. They go over 20. I'd be shocked if they don't go over 20 in this game.
I go over as well. Paul, did you know for the first game you had the prediction for the final score, 24-20 Giants? I actually think that's what the score is going to be this game. So the Giants are going to go over. All right, it's time for you guys' favorite segment of the show. It's time for our final thoughts and this week's extra point. Tynes, get us started. Here comes the snap and the hold. Get us started.
Yeah, the snap, the hold, the kick is up, and Carrie Underwood's going to be singing her anthem on Sunday. The Giants are, the producers for Sunday Night Football may have to dig really deep to find graphics of the Giants and the Commanders because neither one of these teams have played on Sunday Night Football. They're probably getting B-roll right now at both practices to show Giants players. But anyway, what an exciting time for both teams, the NFC East, and mainly the Giants. That's what this is. It's a Giants show. Giants go in there, and I think, guys, listen, 26-17. I think they win by 9-10 points this game, guys. I just think it's their game. They should have won this game last time. They know that. I don't think the bye week helps Washington either way, and the professional pride. Don't forget, they got their butts kicked last week. They got their butts kicked. That refocuses you as a player, and they're coming down on the train on Sunday, baby.
Paul, final thoughts.
The most shocking thing I think I've heard on the
Blue Rush podcast is that Lawrence Tynes knows what B-roll is. That's very impressive to me. Lawrence Tynes knows B-roll. That's pretty good.
He's very media savvy. He's
very
media savvy.
If he was media savvy back then with Prime Tynes, he'd be a multi-millionaire by now. It's killing me. You didn't make any money on Prime Tynes. Killing me. It's awful. Wish we had this relationship back then. We would have monetized it.
I can get us shirts made, Paul. If you need one.
I think that ship has sailed. But I don't think the Giants ship has sailed, though. I was bullish on them, as I said 2 weeks ago. I'm going to stick with my prediction from 2 weeks ago, 24-20. I think they can, I've seen them win in FedEx Field. I think Daniel Jones is going to play well. And I think there's still some juice in this orange. I really do. That this is not dried up yet for the Giants. I think we'll see some of it Sunday night.
All right, I'm going 24-20, but it's not even a game I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see Jason Garrett on Football Night in America talking about this game. I just want to hear his thoughts, not only the new Giants offense, Daniel Jones, just everything that's going on. I can't wait to see the Jason Garrett face, too. He's like, yeah, thank you. All right.
Clapper.
That's a wrap on the show. The clapper. That's a wrap on the show, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank everyone for watching and listening to this episode of the Blue Rush Podcast, our New York Giants show. Please subscribe to Blue Rush on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow New York Post Sports and SNY's YouTube channels for all videos from Blue Rush. New episodes of the show drop Monday morning following Giants games and Thursdays previewing the week ahead. For Paul Schwartz and Lawrence Tynes, I'm Brandon London, and we're going to catch you guys on another episode of Blue Rush.